Okay, Mr. Chairman, we are now live.
Thank you, and good evening and a very warm welcome to a virtual meeting of the Central and South Planning Committee of the London Borough of Hillingdon. This is a virtual meeting that is also being broadcast simultaneously on the Council's YouTube channel, Hillingdon, London. My name is Councillor Steve Tuckwell and I am the Chairman of this evening's meeting. Before we start, there's some important online housekeeping for everybody present, both officers and voting members. Can I ask that you ensure that any mobile phones around you are placed on silent? If you are wearing a headset, ensure that the microphone is away from your mouth to avoid any noise. Please keep the microphone muted when not speaking and then unmute to speak. And only one person may speak at a time, and I, as chairman, will call those to speak. Okay, as we are in an online format, I do need to formally record people's attendance this evening, both officers and voting members, and I will be calling your name. If I could just ask if you could indicate if you are present. So I'll start with the Vice Chairman this evening, Councillor Chapman.
Good evening, Chairman. Yes, I'm here.
Thank you. Councillor Duncan, the Labour lead.
Yes, present, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Ahmed Walana.
Good evening, Chairman and Committee. I am present.
Thank you. Councillor Brightman.
Good evening, Chairman. Yes, I'm present.
Good evening. Councillor Chamdal.
Present, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Tubadar.
Good evening, all. I am present.
Thank you. Councillor Bira.
Good evening, Chairman. I'm present.
Thank you. And Councillor Dillon.
Good evening, Chairman. Yes, present. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we also have a number of officers this evening who are supporting this evening's meeting. So I just need to do the same. I'll call your name if you could just confirm if you are present. Our planning officer this evening is Meg Harani.
Evening, everyone. Present, Chairman.
Thank you. Our head of planning, James Roger.
I'm present, Chairman.
Thank you. Our Democratic Services Officer this evening, Neil Fraser.
Yes, present, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. And our Legal Advisor this evening is Kelly Munro.
Good evening. Present, Chairman.
Neil, does that confirm everybody is in attendance?
Confirmed, Chairman. Thank you.
And we haven't got a transport officer, I take it, this evening, so James will pick that up as we go through. Okay, thank you. In terms of technical meeting control this evening, if any councillor leaves the virtual meeting partway through due to a lost connection, etc., then I will continue the meeting unless we are not quorate, which, as we know, is 3 councillors. Importantly, any councillor who does leave the meeting for a period of time will not be able to vote on the part of the meeting that they were not present in. Okay, that's the sort of the preamble and housekeeping arrangements. We can now move into the main body of the agenda this evening. So I will start with agenda item number 1, which is apologies for absence. Neil?
Chairman, all members are present.
Okay, good. Agenda item number 2, which is declarations of interest. I know you've been checking that, Neil, but I'll look to see if any councillors are waving at me to see if there's any declarations. No, so there's no declarations of interest. Agenda item number 3 this evening is to sign and receive the minutes of the previous meeting from the 1st of July. Councillor Chamdal, you're indicating.
Thank you, Chairman. Page 2, the first paragraph, it states in there that the site was not in a parking management scheme. Then on page 3, on the 3rd paragraph down, it says a parking management scheme was in operation. Could officers clarify that, please?
Meg, are you able to come in? That was a Newlyn Close application. I think there was a parking management scheme in place from recollection, so that might just be a typo between the 2 paragraphs.
Yes, Chairman. I think at the meeting, the highways officer did confirm that there was a parking management scheme in that area, so the minutes would need to be amended to show that there is a parking management scheme in operation.
Okay. Thank you, Meg. Neil, are you okay to pick that up? Make that amendment?
Yeah, absolutely, Chairman. Thank you.
Okay. I'll pause for a second if there's any other comments in relation to the minutes from the 1st of July. I'm not seeing any members indicate. So, Neil, can we take it that those minutes are agreed?
Approved, Chairman. Thank you.
Okay, good. Right, then we can now move on to agenda item 4 this evening, which is matters that have been notified in advance or urgent, of which there aren't any. And agenda item number 5 is to confirm that there are 2 parts to this evening's meeting. Part 1, it is in public. Part 2 is for enforcement matters, and at that point, when we get to that, the YouTube feed will be disconnected and members and officers will debate those items in private. Okay, that's again the preamble to the agenda. We're now at a point where we can now start to discuss the applications this evening. There are no petition items this evening, but I do believe we have a couple of statements from ward councillors to read out. So that takes us nicely to agenda item 6, which members will be very familiar with. This is an item which we received back in March and deferred for a site visit, and it's now back in front of us for further determination. So I think I will at that point hand over to Meg to take us through agenda item 6, number 39, Station Road at West Stratton. Over to you, Meg.
Thank you, Chairman. This is an item that members will be familiar with. It is an application at 39 Station Road for the change of use of the first floor from residential to a restaurant and takeaway in connection with the ground floor use of the premises. Members will recall that this item was reported to the committee on the 4th of March, which was the last real meeting that we had, as opposed to a virtual one. Seems like ages ago, but and then it was deferred for a site visit, and members did a virtual site visit on the 17th of July, and I think James will speak more about that. If I can just refresh members' memories with the plans and photographs of the site. So this is the location of the site and shows the location in relation to the rest of the shopping area. And these are the elevations. So there is an existing flue in position, and the internal layouts, that's the front, and then the internal layouts. This is the current layout and the proposed layout showing the additional seating on the upper floor and a kitchen as well. And then the photographs, and members will be familiar. And it's this particular property here. It's looking along the road in both directions, and that is the particular property. The issue that members need to consider is whether the loss of the residential is acceptable. Members will be well aware that the loss of residential policy is a key policy in the local plan. It's been carried forward from local plans as far back as I can remember, and members need to obviously consider whether the loss of any residential is acceptable, and give very good reasons why they think it is, if they decide that the loss of residential in this particular case is acceptable. Your officers consider that the safeguarding of the residential is crucial, and there will always be and there continues to be a need for residential properties, and that is the reason why we are recommending refusal. If I can just hand over to James. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Meg. Members should be aware that 2 ward councillors have written to support the proposal, citing its economic development benefits to West Drayton Town Centre since the committee agenda was published. With respect to the virtual tour, I just want to quickly summarise what I think was established during the virtual tour. The committee noted the vertical crack within bedrooms 1 and 2 And also there are areas within version 2 where the plaster has been removed and the brickwork exposed to the wall facing the street. I advise the committee these were of a structural nature and further intrusive investigation by a qualified surveyor would be required, that such investigations and any necessary repair works would be required irrespective of the future use of the property. It was noted in general, though, that the first floor flat, subject to replacement decor, could provide a reasonable standard of living for future occupiers. Councillors need to determine this planning application in accordance with the development plan unless they are convinced that there is a material plan consideration that is of sufficient importance that it outweighs development plan policy. I don't believe, to be blunt, that the site visit assisted the applicant's argument that the state of the flats is such that planning policy should be overridden. That said, in my view, the most relevant material planning consideration is the economic development benefits of the proposal. If anything, these have become more pertinent since the application was lodged due to the COVID virus and its impact on businesses, in particular on town centres. And ever since the application was first lodged, I have been party to quite a number of emails from the applicant, and I just want to quickly read out two lines in one of her emails. I would like to make you aware of how it is more than ever important for my business to survive after the coronavirus new guideline for restaurants. At the moment, my restaurant has not opened yet, and it'd be beneficial for additional space due to the new guideline for social distancing. Now, that email was a few weeks ago, but I've only read it out just to highlight that the applicant clearly considers the COVID virus is irrelevant to consideration of this application. What I think I'd like to do is to actually give the committee some guidance to help you determine this application. This is from a procedural perspective. In my view, what I think you need to do is firstly decide whether, as a committee, you agree that the only relevant material planning consideration which merits debating further is the potential economic development benefits of the proposal. I then think you need to discuss where you think those economic benefits of the proposal, how important they are to West Drayton Town Centre. And then finally, I think you then need to decide whether those benefits are substantial enough to outweigh development plan policy. I think if you go through that process, it will help you determine this application. Obviously, you'd expect me to say that officers are recommending refusal. Nonetheless, you could in theory go against officer recommendation, but I think only if you clearly identify it and explain why you think there's a material planning consideration, which in this case outweighs development plan policy. The committee minutes will need to clearly set out such arguments if members vote to approve the application. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, James, and thank you, Meg. Right, I've got a couple of points I want to pick up before we open up the debate, but we do have statements from ward councillors, I believe, have been submitted to Democratic Services. Neil, is that correct?
That's correct, Chairman. Thank you. And with your permission, I'll read those now.
I'll leave it over to you to read them out.
Thank you, Councillor. So the first was received from Councillor Mathers. He writes, I wish to add my comments for consideration as a West Drayton ward councillor in regards to the planning application for 39 Station Road, West Drayton, which is due to be considered at the next Central and South Planning Committee. Over recent years, West Drayton has contributed significantly to the council's housing target, with large developments such as those on the old RAF site to more modest developments such as those on the old police station, British Legion, and replacing a number of public houses, including one on West Drayton High Street recently completed. In contrast, West Drayton High Street has struggled to keep its retail and business units occupied and remain a vibrant offer to local residents. We have an abundance of fast food outlets and estate agents, and so the restaurant at 39 Station Road provides a positive alternative and popular choice for local residents. In these increasingly difficult times for our high streets, with restaurateurs struggling to survive due to the pandemic and needing more space to serve customers whilst remaining financially viable, we need to think differently to how we did before the pandemic and do all we can to support businesses for a strong recovery. This change of use provides much needed support for this business and our high street, with relatively minimal impact on the overall number of residential units in the borough. A number of residents and other local businesses have approached me in support of this application, so I urge you to resist the officer's recommendation to reject and approve this application, which is beneficial to the local community in West Drayton and the prosperity of the borough. The second submission was from Councillor Sweeting, who writes, I write as a West Drayton Ward Councillor regarding the planning application for 39 Station Road, West Drayton, and will ask that my comments on the application are considered by your committee in its deliberations. I recognise that this application has already been subject to much debate and that a virtual site visit has been undertaken by the committee. However, I note that the report has again recommended refusal, which is of considerable concern, as if this recommendation is confirmed, it will not aid the future financial viability of this very well-regarded restaurant, nor will it mean that the owner of the building will be undertaking the extensive refurbishment works necessary to enable the flat to be resurrected from its current poor state. So we'd be in a lost-lost situation, I would suggest. The High Street in West Drayton was already one where businesses lived on a knife edge of not being financially viable. With the COVID pandemic, it will make this situation even worse, and we are indeed going to see many local businesses floundering, especially businesses in the hospitality sector. This will be especially true of the restaurant Positano, as it has a very small and restricted interior where tables were situated very close together before the pandemic. With social distancing measures imposed, and the real possibility of a second wave of infection, the capacity of the restaurant will be significantly reduced if it is to keep to government strictures. Therefore, I suggest to the committee that allowing the restaurant to occupy the first floor may indeed mean that it would be possible for it to continue, as it would enable additional tables to be added in this time of COVID, which has not seemed to have an end. Whilst recognising the importance of ensuring housing units are not reduced in number, what we have here is a business whose viability is at risk due to circumstances not of its making. The flat above will not be refurbished, and what we may have is a lack of a business in an area where it is likely that many businesses will fail. So, I ask that the committee considers the very special circumstances which exist at present, and so ask that the application be approved. Thank you for considering this email. Back to you, Chairman.
Thank you, Neil, and thank you for the officers for presenting the application. Before we open it up to debate, I just want to sort of reiterate a couple of points that James made. Given that we know this application very well, we've been in front of us before, we've deferred, we've had the very first virtual site visit, I believe, as well. But I think I need to consider guiding committee and how we can procedurally go about determining this application. In my view, what you need to think about is whether the committee agrees that only the relevant planning considerations which merits debating further the potential economic development which James talked about. You then need to discuss what you think the economic benefits of this proposals are and how important they are to West Drayton's High Street and Town Centre. You then need to finally decide what the benefits are so substantive that they outweigh the loss of a residential unit, and in doing so need to be mindful that officers, as we know, are recommending refusal of this application. Nonetheless, we could in theory, or you could in theory, go against the officer's recommendation, but only if we clearly identify and explain where you think the material planning consideration outweighs the development plan policy. The committee minutes, as was mentioned earlier on, need to reflect such arguments for transparency if the members vote to approve this application. So those are the key points I wanted to raise. I think we can now open this up for debate amongst members, and I think I saw Councillor Chapman, you indicated, and followed by Councillor Duncan.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I did. As has been stated, we have heard this application before. We deferred it. I think it's fair to say there was a certain degree of sympathy for it as well, and we wanted to defer it to get better information because we were conscious that we were going to go against plan. I have to say the site visit, probably, as James has said, the site visit probably didn't help, to be honest, because we were faced with a fairly viable two-bedroom flat sort of thing, so that didn't help. That said, I am still very sympathetic towards this application. I'll set my stall out straight away that I would like to propose that we accept it. I'm conscious, however, that we can't just simply accept it because we're going to ignore the officer's recommendation, so to speak. As has been said, policy DMH1 says that we need to safeguard existing housing stock. However, I'm reading verbatim here, as you can tell. Paragraph 4.5 states that exceptional circumstances may exist which outweigh the loss of residential policy. The point being, we have to illustrate why. Now, you'll be pleased to know that I've had a lot of free time recently with lockdown, and I've actually been reading the local plan. And in page 18, 3.7, it refers to the council will consider proposals which constitute a departure from policies in this chapter, where they provide clear and long-lasting benefits to the vitality and viability of town centres in the borough. As one of the letters that came in from one of the ward councillors states, we're not simply here talking about another chicken shop. We're not talking about yet another estate agents or fast food. I think we've got a very nice niche family-owned restaurant, family-owned Italian restaurant here. It's not part of a chain. It's quite unique. I would suggest, I believe the Americans call it an anchor tenant. It's something that will attract people to the area, that sort of thing. I think it will add to the vitality and viability and indeed variety of West Drayton High Street. And as such, I would suggest that given the difficult economic times, mention COVID as well for that matter. I'm trying to avoid mentioning COVID, but let's be honest, it's relevant as well. But given all that, I think we need to hang on to little niche shops like this. And on that basis, I would recommend that it's an exception to the rule. And as such, I would propose that we reject the officer's recommendation and we allow it to go through. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Chapman. Lots of free time on one's hand at the moment, but thank you for outlining your view there. Councillor Duncan, you indicated.
Yes, thank you very much, Chair. I agree with and would echo Councillor Chapman's views on this. I won't say everything that he has said because I agree with what he said. And if you remember when we first considered this, most unusually and exceptionally for me, I don't think I have ever argued for a loss of a residential unit. So it was quite unprecedented for me to do that. But I do think that there are exceptional circumstances. And I do think that COVID-19 and the pandemic has highlighted those because what this pandemic has done, it's started to threaten the viability of small businesses, well, and large businesses as well, as we know from news reports. And this is a very viable and much valued local facility. I think local councillors in both Useley, West Drayton and surrounding area could all confirm that. And I think the petition of support, if one reads through some of the comments in the report, highlight the reasons why. It is different. It isn't another chicken shop, as Councillor Chapman described. And I think because it's a very narrow unit, a single shop unit, it's difficult to get a 2-metre distance. So it's physically very difficult for this business to be able to comply with government guidelines at this time. And it's essential that happens in the hospitality industry for these businesses, not just this, but others like them as well, to survive. And so I do think there is an economic benefit in this being able to continue, because if it just introduced social distancing in the existing unit, we can see from the plans it would considerably reduce the number of covers that they would be able to have in the restaurant, and that, I think, it would make it no longer economically viable. So a lot of businesses, small business, sometimes do work on, quite narrow margins. We have to consider that. It is very well or used to be very well patronised in West Drayton, and I know several residents used to comment they were pleased about this business, and other businessmen would comment that it did bring people in to the centre, and they did a lunchtime menu so that other shops would be visited and would benefit from people coming into the area. So I think it had an economic benefit, just not of itself, but also to the wider business community. So they're the economic benefits as I see them, in it continuing as a viable business, also to West Drayton. And I do think at this very difficult time for everybody, and I'm sure this isn't the only business that we we see where we will be asking to make special arrangements in some way for them to be able to continue. I think that may happen on others, but I do think in this case, I agree with Councillor Chapman, there are exceptional circumstances, and I would like to second his proposal that in this case, we do approve the development. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Duncan. Any other councillors? Councillor Chamdell.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, listen, we are going against the development plan policy if we do go against the officer's recommendations. I think there are valid reasons here that's been discussed. I think the councillors' input that just been read by Neil, that is also welcomed. I don't want to feel like there's putting a gun against our head saying, look, either approve it or, you know, this unit won't be used. It won't be used for residential. It won't be improved. It won't be decorated because of the cost. I want that one to happen. But I think the reasons that we are stating, they are exceptional. We are in amongst an exceptional period of time where we have COVID. It's changed everybody's lives for a long time to come, but I am conscious also there is no wheelchair access going to be available on his first floor. Noise levels have not been put forward in any shape or form. We don't know whether there's going to be parties all night there on the first floor because we have neighbours. They have neighbours either side. Now, I understand when people buy flats above commercial properties, there's going to be a little bit of give and take. But now we're talking about having the restaurant now also moved upstairs. So it's going to be in virtual direct contact, should we say, with the neighbours. I've read the papers, they do say that we've got to put those conditions in, but it would have been extremely helpful if the owner had already enacted this and put this into our papers as well, because I think this is a critical area. Because the last thing we want to do is approve this exceptional circumstance, which it is, and then find out there's a problem with noise, ASB, smells, and all the rest of it. So I'm conscious that I support what's been said so far, especially when it comes to small business. I do know a little bit about small businesses, and you know we all are struggling in terms of that. But I don't want to create another problem by then going forward without having really stringent conditions attached.
Thank you, Councillor Chamdell. I think what we'll do is we'll hear from other members to see what the mood is for this particular application, and then depending on which way it goes, then we can sort of move on to potential conditions. Any other councillors looking to indicate? Councillor Ahmed Walanda, did you have your hand up?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. You know, after this debate, putting emotions aside, not to be emotional, we only have discussed one thing, and that is town centre economic development. Now, I agree with Councillor Chapman and Councillor Duncan and the rest, but I have concerns about where the kitchen will be downstairs, upstairs, and the noise and smell issues, because I have been dealing with the smell issues for 5-6 years, and that triggers, you know, the conflict between neighbors and businesses and the rest. So if we could have a sort of summary of the robust conditions to just make sure that we have covered everything, not only one thing, but of course we are going to go against the policy and plans, and bear in mind that there is no floodgate of the applications that we're setting up a bad precedent. So on one hand, I am supporting the application and my colleagues, but if the officers could address these concerns, and also finally, if the owner is willing to listen, the officers, if they recommend such tough conditions. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Tubadar, you did indicate, but James wanted to come in and maybe pick up points raised by Councillor Ahmed Boulana.
Okay, I give way to James because the points which I was going to raise are equivalent to what has been mentioned already.
Okay, thank you. James?
Yeah, so the proposal is for a first floor restaurant. Obviously, what we don't want to do is, if members were minded to allow the proposal, have a situation where there's noise issues to adjacent first floor flats. So it's entirely possible to have a sound attenuation scheme that addresses such a concern. There is a new staircase proposed, there is removal of internal walls. So this is a change of use that involves quite extensive internal building works. And there's no reason that those internal building works shouldn't include proper sound attenuation. There shouldn't necessarily be a problem with smells because it's at first floor and they can effectively, through flues and such like, ensure deal with that issue. But that's not to say that shouldn't be conditioned as well. I'm sure that what I think members need to do is to firstly, as the chairman said, decide whether they wish to go against officer's recommendation or not. And then if they decide to do that, I'm sure that Meg Harani can guide members as to what conditions we might wish to impose.
Yeah, thank you, James. And I think before we go on to what might be, I think I do want to get a mood and a sense from other members in the committee as well as to where this application may be heading. So, Councillor Birra and then Councillor Dillon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's been with us for some time and I listen very, very carefully. And it's quite a lot being said on there. And I support my colleague, both Councillor Chapman and Councillor Duncan, I second that, subject to the conditions like smells and wheelchairs.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Dillon, you indicated.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I've kind of been sitting on the fence with this one. It's very difficult to go against officers' recommendation and policy for that fact. But then there's certain sympathy with it being a business, a viable business that wants to expand, and we should also be encouraging that because that creates employment. So with what's been said and knowing that West Drayton has also achieved over the last few years a significant increase in development and the offer of housing, I would be minded to go against the officer's recommendation and be voting for the application, if that helps.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Dillon. Okay, I think I've not got any other councillors indicating, but I will be asking if we have, as a committee, or if you as a committee has passed the test in being able to determine the economic development benefits of this proposal versus going against established planning policy. So, James, is there anything you want to add to that at this point?
I'm quite comfortable that the committee have kind of set out a cohesive argument to go against policy in this instance. All I would say is it is important that there's detailed minutes setting out the reasons the committee have made the decision, but I'm confident our clerk tonight, Neil Fraser, will have taken copious notes. And yeah, I think it's members have set out clear arguments, and if members vote to approve, then it's just a discussion of the conditions. But I think it would have to be a conditional approval. There would certainly need to be some conditions imposed.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think we need to know where we're going with this in the first instance. I'm not seeing any members indicating. So we are, I believe, moved by Councillor Chapman to approve officer's recommendation. To go against officer's recommendation and approve this application.
Mr. Chairman, if I might just interject, before we move to a vote, it might be useful just for Mr. Harani to set out what conditions could be applied to this application before Members vote to approve.
Yeah, I was going to do that afterwards, but it makes sense to do it beforehand, Neil. Yeah. So before we go to that, Meg, can you give us an indication as to what you might set out by way of conditions for this?
Thank you, Chairman. I think there are two important conditions that I would recommend. Obviously, there's the normal one of the time limit, but other than that, there are two other conditions which I would recommend. One is the need for sound insulation to the party walls on both sides, particularly given the residential use adjoining. And the second one is that I think we would recommend an hours of use condition, even if it only applies to the first floor. I'm not sure that there is an hours restriction on the ground floor at the moment. I'd have to check the history, and I know the restaurant's been there a long time, so it's possible it doesn't have an hours restriction on the ground floor. But despite that, I think that we should still have a condition recommending or restricting the hours of use of the first floor, again, given the residential use of the adjoining properties. And I would restrict that use upstairs to 11 p.m. maximum. And members obviously will need to decide whether that or later or earlier hours should be conditioned. Those are the two main conditions that I would recommend. There is an existing flue there. The main kitchen is on the ground floor existing, and the flue is connected to that. So there wouldn't be a need for an extractor condition in this case. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Meg. Okay, that's given members a bit of an insight. Councillor Chamdale, you have indicated.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, Meg, I entirely agree with what's been said. It's just the times that they can open. I think we need to look at 11 o'clock, I believe, is late for Monday to Friday, or Monday to Thursday at least. I suggest that should be lower, and then Friday, Saturday can be slightly higher. Then obviously Sunday to Thursday, say 10 o'clock, and then Friday, Saturday, it can be 11 o'clock. So obviously, if there's small kids going to school and all the rest of it, I think that's a reasonable time for somebody to shut up shop. But the whole business is not shutting up shop, because the downstairs obviously is going to be open. As for the wheelchair access, I don't know what we can do about that. If you can't get a wheelchair upstairs, you can't, but you can get downstairs. But should be minded that they should be refusing customers with wheelchair access just because they fall downstairs. Then I don't know what we got in place that we could possibly ask them to, obviously have some sort of area which is guaranteed for people with who are not as able as most people.
Thank you. Well, I think the access officers provided a bit of an insight in the report, but Meg, do you want to come back on Councillor Chandler?
Thank you, Chairman. I think it's very difficult to specify a particular area or a particular reservation, if you like, for disabled access. There are no external changes proposed to the frontage, so that remains as is. And we could ask that wheelchair access is provided on the ground floor as part of a condition. But further than that, I don't think we can, if the ground floor is full, then I don't think we can have a condition which says that a disabled persons must be accommodated despite the fact. So we could have a condition which requires disabled access to the ground floor, but further than that, I don't think we can go. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Meg. I think the access officer has actually provided quite a comprehensive update on page 16 of the report. He's suggesting an informative, whether that's a condition or not, but that's the usual standard informative for access anyway. But I think on this basis, then, the exact wording of a condition. Roy, did you want to come back?
Sorry, Chairman. Thank you. Yeah, about the noise. I understand they're going to put noise proofing in there, but in terms of what they're going to play, if they're going to play any music upstairs, is it going to be background music or is it going to be amplified music? Or should we now consider that should be no music upstairs at all? fine downstairs, but nothing upstairs.
If I could come in, Chairman, I think we could have a condition which restricts that there is no music upstairs, which I think would be the best option. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Dillon?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think restricting music to 0 would be unfavourable to the business. Really, there's always a level of ambient music that should be allowed. I think we should condition it on the decibel level. We don't want loud parties up there or kids' parties running on till 11 o'clock at night. But ambient music in a restaurant is often quite nice and it helps the business. You know, it creates an atmosphere. And often, when you go to a restaurant and you're landing upstairs, it's bad enough as it is. It's always quiet and nobody really wants to go upstairs to the restaurant. They want to sit where it's all happening downstairs. I think dulling that atmosphere down even more would be detrimental. To allow ambient music, but condition music from up to a certain decibel, I think would be sensible.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Dillon. Okay, I can't see any other officers, members indicating here. I think just to summarise, in terms of conditions, we're looking at time, sound and noise, the hours of use, and I think in terms of the actual wording, that would be something that I'll delegate to James, and then it would be up to myself as chairman and Councillor Duncan's Labour lead to agree the wording of those. Are you up with that, Councillor Duncan?
Yes, that's fine, Chairman. Thank you.
Because then there may well be some other conditions which, in the fullness of time, are considered to be one of supporting the application, but also safeguarding those neighbouring residents as well, which is what we're all about. Okay. Not seeing anybody else. I think we can move on to a vote now. We are moved by Councillor Chapman to reject the officer's recommendation and to approve the application for number 39 Station Road. I'm at the point now where I can actually move to a vote. So Councillor Chapman, you move, so I take it you're for rejecting officer's recommendation?
I am, Chairman.
Oh, sorry, Chairman, can I just interrupt? It's Kerry Munro, the legal officer. I just wanted to highlight that the conditions that we implement would need to have reasons before it to validate why we are restricting the permission. So I'm thinking maybe if we put it out, I know it's difficult because it's an overturn from the officer's report, but the conditions should be explored really with the decision makers and for them to put their reasoning. One that I was thinking about was the waste, the refuse waste. I know it's difficult because of time, but the conditions, just in case the applicant was aggrieved, and then the conditions were then subsequently made, so they haven't had the reasoning.
Thank you, Kerry. I think it would be fair to say that conditions always contain a paragraph for the reasons behind them, don't they? Is that right, Meg?
Thank you, Chairman. I think that in terms of things like waste and so on, this is an existing use, so those are already in operation, and I don't think we need a condition which requires waste disposal details and so on, because this is a use that's already in operation, and those waste collection and so on is already being done. So there's nothing new there. The conditions that we are particularly talking about will be because of the impact on adjoining occupiers and reducing that to an acceptable level. And that would be the reasons why members hopefully will be imposing those conditions if the application is approved. Thank you, Chairman.
Chairman, if I could, I think what Kerry's saying is she's cautioning us as a committee in terms of myself, you, Chairman, and Councillor Duncan coming up with a whole range of different conditions that weren't mentioned at the meeting. but I don't think that would be applicable in this case. I think the focus is going to be on noise conditions, and I think the committee have, had a quite detailed debate as to how they might be, which conditions might apply. So I think we'd be okay in this case. I don't think there's going to be any big surprises to the applicant in terms of the final wording of the plan.
Absolutely. Members have indicated very clearly what they think are their main concerns around conditions, and I think you're absolutely right in what you say there. Councillor Duncan.
Yes, for the avoidance of doubt and to follow the legal advice, can I just say that the conditions that have been discussed and proposed, I think would all be to protect the amenities of adjoining residents on either side. And that was certainly my meaning and understanding behind what other members expressed and what we agreed with. So that they would be the reasons. The detailed wording of that we would be agreeing later, but it is to protect the amenities of adjoining residents in respect of noise, etc. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Duncan. Okay. No other indications. We will try to. Councillor Brightman.
Thank you, Chairman. Just one last thing. It may have been talked about earlier, but vibration, because there's a staircase going in there from ground floor to the second floor. Will there be adequate insulation for that? So it's not like a herd of elephants trucking up and down, because that's a sort of noise that carries, or is that covered in existing noise controls?
If I can quickly answer that, I think if members look at page 17, the noise officers actually set out in detail some of the effectively the recommended conditions, and there's actually quite a lot of detail within those in terms of wall structures and the noise mitigations and measures that would be required. So I think yes, as long as the the staircase would be taken into account, the wall structures would be taken into account, but yes, hopefully page 17 gives further guidance to councillors as to how the conditions might be structured and the exact reasons and planning policies that would be applied.
I saw a thumbs up there, Councillor Brightman. I'll take it you're okay. Yeah, another thumbs up there. That's good. Okay, right. No more people waving at me, so we'll go to the votes on this one. We will start again with Councillor Chapman, just for good measure. I take it, Councillor, you moved, so you are for refusing officer's recommendation and to approve this application.
Reject the recommendation, approve the application, Chairman.
With the conditions delegated to myself.
With the conditions that are going to be delegated.
Okay. Councillor Ahmed Walana?
Yes, Chairman. For
rejection of the officer's recommendation and approval of the scheme.
Yes, indeed.
Okay, thank you. It's a bit confusing, I know, but Councillor Brightman?
I vote with Alan to reject the officer's recommendation and go ahead with the expansion.
Thank you, Councillor Brightman. Councillor Chamdale?
Yes, Chairman, I reluctantly go against the officer's recommendations, go with this development, but with the keynote on these conditions are thorough.
Okay. Made your point very clear there, Councillor. Councillor Tubadar?
I also go for rejecting the officer's recommendation and for the approval of the application, and with all rigid conditions protecting the residents surrounding this restaurant.
Thank you. Councillor Duncan, you seconded, but just for the record.
Yes, approve the application and grant planning permission. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Bira?
Thank you, Chairman. I'm sorry I approved the development of the projects, but sorry I can't support the officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bira and Councillor Dillon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, again, reluctantly go against policy and the officer's recommendation and for the application. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dillon. Okay, that's all the votes now cast. I make that, Neil, unanimous to reject the officer's recommendation and approve this application subject to delegated conditions that will be approved by myself and Councillor Duncan. Is that correct?
That's correct, Chairman.
Okay, right, so item number 6 is approved. Okay, we can now move on to agenda item 7, which is Brunel University and some cycle racks. Over to you, Meg.
Thank you, Chairman. This is very similar to cases that have been before you previously. It's for additional cycle racks to do with the cycle hire scheme, the Santander scheme, and it's in the middle of Brunel University campus, so there are no impacts if I just go directly to the plans. This just shows the site. And then the location of the racks in this particular position. And again, the black are the existing racks, and these are an additional 10 to those that are existing there. That's the position, and that's the position of the racks, and the additional photographs relate to the existing. So it's just following, so it's in this position here. No issues arise, and the racks are obviously welcome, and the scheme appears to be successful. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Meg, for your presentation. We got no petition on this item, so Councillor Chamdow, you indicated.
Thank you, Chairman. Yep, it's within the green belt, within the university campus. Wonderful idea. Get more students on bikes. Get everybody on bikes at this rate. And I'll go for the. I would like to go for the officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Chamdow. Councillor Duncan?
Yes, good idea. I second this. If Councillor Chamdow was moving it, I second it. Thank you.
Okay, no, thank you. I can't see any other councillors indicating, so I think that can take us straight to the vote. Councillor Chapman?
Thank you, Chairman. Go with officer's recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Ahmed Walana?
For the recommendations, Mr. Chairman.
Councillor Brightman?
Go with officer's recommendations, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Chamdow, you moved, so I'll take your 4.
Officer's recommendation, Chairman.
Councillor Tubadar?
Good idea for the officer's recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Duncan, you seconded, so I'll take it to your 4.
Yes, I'm for. Thank you.
Councillor Bira?
4, Chairman.
Thank you. And Councillor Dillon?
4, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Neil, I'll make that unanimous 8 out of 8 for approval of the agenda item 7. Can you confirm?
Confirm, Chairman.
Okay, I can confirm agenda item 7 is approved. We can move on now to agenda item 8 this evening, which again is Brunel University and solar panels this time. So, Meg, over to you.
Thank you, Chairman. Carrying on the theme of sustainability, this is an application for some solar panels on the Quad North building. And again, I think it's best if I go direct to the photographs and plans. So that's the building itself. And again, the site is in the Greenbelt, again in the middle of Brunel University campus, not particularly visible from outside. And that's the siting of the building within the overall campus. And these are the existing roof layouts, and then the proposed roof with the solar panels indicated right across the roof. That's the building itself. It's a flat roof building. The panels won't be visible from ground level, so they will obviously be at an angle, but given the height of the buildings and so on, they won't be visible from ground level. So no issues in relation to impact and recommendation for approval. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much for that, Meg. I'm now back on gallery screen so I can see Councillor Chandal and Councillor Duncan.
Thank you, Chairman. Good clean energy, setting good practices in the middle of, I know it's Greenbelt, but again in the middle of the campus, and I would like to go with the officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Duncan?
Yes, thoroughly agree, and I would like to second, Chair. Thank you.
Okay. Can't see any other members indicating, so we can move straight to the vote. Councillor Chapman?
Thank you, Chairman. Go with officer's recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Ahmed Walana?
For, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Brightman?
Go with officer's recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Chandal, you moved, so
go with officer's recommendation, Chairman.
Councillor Tubadar?
Thank you, Chairman. Go for the officer's recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Duncan, you seconded, so I take it you're for.
I'm for.
Good. Councillor Bira?
For, Chairman.
And Councillor Dillon?
For, Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Thank you. I make that unanimous 8 votes for approval of agenda item 8. Neil, can you confirm?
Confirm, Chairman.
Okay, agenda item 8 this evening is approved. Agenda item 9, we're going to move to Grosvenor Playing Fields on Kingshill Avenue, Hayes. So, Meg, over to you for agenda item 9.
Thank you, Chairman. This is an application for a storage container on a site within the Greenbelt. The application is for the use of sports use, and therefore it's for the storage of sport equipment to do with Gaelic Football Club that uses the site next door for their games. The application does comply with Greenbelt policy in that it is a development associated with outdoor recreation, and therefore we are recommending approval. The key condition is number 3 in this particular case, which requires details of the colours of the paintwork to be agreed with officers and members if required before the use commences, and hopefully we can then make sure that it is not particularly visible. It is sited on an existing area of hard standing, so there won't be any new hard standing created for this. If I can just go through the plans and photographs. So that's the siting, and the field that's being used is this area in the adjacent. The whole site is in the Greenbelt, and that fairly faint plans, unfortunately, but shows the siting, and that shows the exact siting and the area of hard standing that's existing. It is set back from the road. This is the road. There are quite substantial trees in front, so it won't be particularly visible from the road frontage. That's the site itself, and that's looking at it from the road frontage, and then so as I said, the application is in compliance with Greenbelt policy, and therefore we are recommending it for approval. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much for that, Meg. 2 councillors very quick off the mark on this one. I've got Councillor Brightman and Councillor Chapman. So, Councillor Brightman.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to say that given that it's pretty well obscured and going to be conditioned on the colour of the paint, I'd like to move that we go with officers' recommendations.
Thank you, Councillor Brightman. Councillor Chapman?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I'm more than happy to second the proposal. The only things I would question, 5 years seems quite a long temporary period. Would maybe 2 or 3 years be more acceptable? The only other thing as well, which means it's not the only thing, but there you go. I appreciate externally the paintwork's going to be done in such a way that it is effectively camouflage, shall we say. Can we also somehow prohibit, shall we say, banners or advertising, that sort of thing? I appreciate we could in theory say you've got to paint it green and hide it, and then you could actually put a big advertising hoarding saying come and join our club, so to speak. So can we somehow condition those out as well?
Yeah, okay.
On top of the camouflage, as it were.
Thank you for that, Councillor Chapman. Meg, a couple of points picked up there. Can you pick those points up? 5-year timescale, and can we do anything to prevent sort of bright banners being put on?
Thank you, Chairman. The 5-year timescale is sort of a normal timescale for temporary buildings that we grant. I think it's for one particular reason, which is that it gives a sufficient amount of time for a permanent solution to be found, and that takes obviously possible purchase of land and raising of finances for a pavilion and so on. So that is the reason why we've given that length of time, and it's more than likely that they will come back to renew it in 5 years' time, but because it usually takes longer to get to a permanent solution. So that's the timescale. In terms of the advertisements, we could put a specific condition. They do require permission for most advertisements, but if members, there are some advertisements that they could put up, which would be permitted, and if members wanted to, they could restrict all advertisements on the site if that was the members' wish, and that would be a specific condition. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you for that, Meg. Councillor Chapman, do you want to come back on those points, and then Councillor Duncan?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Yeah, okay. I'm more than happy to go with 5 years if that's the norm. I can certainly understand the arguments as well. If there's already a restriction in place, you appreciate I'm envisaging the enormous loud banners and big banners, so to speak. If there's already restrictions in place, I'm more than happy to go with the current legislation, so to speak. I've got no problems, for example, with somebody, you know, a discrete phone number or contact details, that sort of thing. So I'm more than happy to go with it.
Thank you, Councillor Chapman. I've got Councillor Duncan and Councillor Chandale.
I would like to restrict all advertising and banners because it is in the green belt, and though I think that yes, obviously, you know, some modest directional sign maybe so that people know where to turn off, but it is a club, going to be for club use, so hopefully once people know that, there wouldn't be a need for advertising. But I think given the circumstances that it is in the green belt, that all advertising should be under the control of planning. The other thing is the piece of hard standing that it's going to be situated on in the photographs looked to be in rather a neglected state, which of course it would be. As one of the benefits of granting this permission, could it be that they have to tidy that area up? Otherwise, they'll just be setting a building down there and there'll be no benefit into that public use for the public or anybody else for allowing this, albeit complementary use of development within the green belt. So I think that would just be an added public benefit, that that hard standing area is cleared up a bit because it looked very unsightly.
Thank you, Councillor Duncan. Meg, a couple of points there around the advertising, which we've already had mentioned, but then tidying up the area surrounding the new container. Anything we can do with that?
It's a difficult one because the site does actually belong to us, and we are going to be leasing it to the club. We could require them to then the site actually relates only to the siting of the building itself rather than the whole hard standing, and I'm wondering whether we could actually condition it because it's not part of the application site, and it might be an issue of whether the condition would be legal or not. to tidy up the rest of the hard standing. We might need to get some legal advice on that. Thank you, Chairman.
If it's not part of the application site, then maybe this is an issue for local councillors to raise as an ME in terms of the council's maintenance of public areas. So I accept the advice on that. If it's not within the red line, then it's a bit difficult to ask people to do something outside that, particularly if it is the council's responsibility. Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Chamdal?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, my points have already been made, especially with regards advertising. I think there shouldn't be any advertising. Also, welcome back no floodlighting. I think sometimes it's missed out. It's in the report. There is no floodlighting, so that shouldn't affect the green belt itself. Thank you. No harm.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Ahmed Walana.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It is no causing public harm and complying with the green belt policies. It's just simple to support it as long as it's nicely painted. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Councillor Dillon, I didn't miss you indicating, did I? I looked away for a second and I thought I saw you indicate.
Mr. Chairman, I thank you, but you didn't know.
Okay. Right. We are moved. We are seconded. We've had a debate around advertising. If we're happy, we can delegate the wording to the head of planning on that, to officers on that. Would that be okay, James and Meg?
Yeah, we can have a condition restricting advertisements. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, good. So we are moved and seconded. So I propose we go to the voters. I'm not seeing any other indicators. So Councillor Chapman, you seconded. So I'll take it you're for.
Go with officer's recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Ahmed Walana.
For the recommendations, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Brightman, you moved. So I'll take it you're for.
I am.
Good. Councillor Chamdal.
For.
Yeah. Councillor Tubadar.
Just finding the mute button. For the officer's recommendation, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Duncan.
For, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Bira.
For, Chairman.
And Councillor Dillon.
For, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I make that 4 out of 8. Neil, do you confirm that that's unanimous for agenda item 9?
Confirm, Chairman.
Okay, so agenda item 9 is approved. Thank you very much. Agenda item 10, Crimson Court on the Uxbridge Road. Over to you, Meg.
Thank you, Chairman. This application relates to Crimson Court, which is a 3-storey former office building. It does have prior approval for conversion to residential, and this application is for a 2-storey or 3-storey side extension, in fact, to provide additional flats. The application is recommended for approval. In terms of its design and so on, it's acceptable. In terms of its impact on the adjoining occupiers, we consider it to be acceptable. And the application is reported to members as we are requiring a it's reported to members as ward councillors request. We are satisfied that the application complies fully in terms of a provision of residential accommodation. The size of the accommodation is acceptable. It is provided with balconies which are of a size which are recommended within the local plan. So we are recommending approval on it. If I can just go directly to the plans. That's the application site. And This is the existing situation. There is sufficient parking on site, and this is the existing parking allocation scheme, and the proposed plan showing the allocations. So members will note that there isn't a parking allocation condition on this particular scheme because that has been provided as part of the scheme. This is the existing first floor and the proposed first floor. So the extension is in essence in this position here with a drive into the existing parking area, and members will see that in the elevations. So it's sufficiently removed from Fairside or Parkside House, sorry. There are windows in the side elevations, and the impact on those is set out in the officer's report within the impacts on neighbours section on pages 64 and 65. And that's the existing roof plan and the proposed roof plan. So in essence, the extension is this element here. And these are new bin and bike stores. And again, these details are provided up front. So they're not part of the recommended conditions. These are the existing elevations, and this is the existing and proposed street view. So members will note that the actual extension is this element here, and then and drive through element there. The existing elevations and the proposed elevations. So in terms of its design, it reflects the existing building. As I said, there are windows in the side elevation, but they do have primary windows on the frontage as well to the same room. So the impact on those windows is considered to be acceptable. And the design follows the design of the existing building. So your officers consider that the application is acceptable. It complies fully with the council's policies, and it provides additional residential accommodation. Thank you, Chairman.
No, thank you for taking us through that this evening, Meg. Okay, right. Who wants to start the debate? Councillor Duncan.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, it's some more residential units in a residential block in accordance with council policies. And actually, I think the balconies are rather a nice addition to this. I move officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Duncan. Councillor Berra.
Thank you, Chairman. And certainly is a nice one. And I move, I second the recommendation, officers.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Berra. Councillor Chapman, on your doorstep, this one in your ward, you indicated?
Not quite on my doorstep, but certainly in my ward, Chairman. Thank you. Yeah, I'm more than happy to support the application. The only thing I would ask, as has been pointed out, the bin store area is being redesigned and indeed expanded. As you could see from the photographs, the actual doors are external to the main gate, so to speak. And I appreciate the actual gates, the actual doors of the bin area will move, etc. I have had some issues in the past with the current setup in that the doors are left open, or indeed at one point there was a door off for a long time and it wouldn't, it was literally physically there but not movable. Would it be possible to condition in some way that the bin store door is A, kept closed when not in use, and B, maintained? That's all I would say. If that's possible, I'm more than happy.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Councillor. James Roger, you're indicating there.
You won't really leave this. I was actually thinking of suggesting committee add such a condition worded very similar to as outlined by Councillor Chapman, because I get copied into a lot of members' inquiries, and I know the problems that come with the management of bin stores. It may sound an unexciting topic, but I know it can be a bit of an issue. So I think we should add an extra condition in this case.
Councillor Chapman, did you want to come back?
Very much appreciated, James. Thanks for that. I would qualify the fact that it is in fact a fascinating topic, but apart from that, I'll go along with it.
I'm sure there's a pun there to be had, but maybe not for the meeting. So, okay, so we're seconded, delegated authority to officers to add a condition in relation to the bin store. I'm not seeing any other councillors indicate to me, so I'm saying we can move to a vote now. So, Councillor Chapman.
Thank you, Chairman. Go with officer's recommendation, subject, well, not subject to, but also with the extra condition.
Thank you. Councillor Ahmed Walana.
For, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Brightman.
For, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Chandal.
That was officer's recommendation, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Tubadar.
For the officer's recommendation, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Duncan, you moved, so you must be for it.
For, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Berry, you seconded, so I'll take it you're for.
Definitely for, Mr. Chairman.
And Councillor Dillon.
For, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Now I'll make that 8 votes for. That's unanimous with obviously delegated authority to add a condition around the bin store. Is that correct?
That's correct, Chairman.
Okay. Agenda item 10 is approved. Okay, we can move on to agenda item 11. And as we say on every meeting, this wouldn't be a Central and South meeting without a telecoms master. So I'm sure they're saving them up for us, one a month. But we'll hand over to Meg for Lombardy Retail Park, Uxbridge Road, Hayes. Meg.
Thank you, Chairman. This is an application for a monopole, 20-metre monopole with cabinets and the removal of the existing monopole. Members will note from the front sheet that it is said that it's recommended for refusal. There is an addendum which says this is incorrect. It is in fact recommended for approval. I think it's best if I go directly to the plans which show the existing and proposed siting, and we as officers consider that there would be limited impact from the proposed, given the surrounding area and the sort of minimal siting changes that are being made, if you like. So if I go directly to the presentation. So this, I think, is a good plan to start with. This is the location of the existing, and there's a grass or raised grass verge and path in this location within the centre of the carriageway, and the proposal is to remove the existing monopole and cabinets and provide new monopole and cabinets in the central area. Very sort of minor resiting, if you like, and again that shows it in relation to the surrounding buildings. This is a retail park. The borough boundary is very close by, and the nearest residential properties are across the road, across the Uxbridge Road there. This again shows the siting. This is the existing siting, and the proposed, and the existing elevations and the proposed. Members will have seen these plans numerous times over the last few committees, so they'll be very familiar with the size and scale of the monopole and the surrounding cabinets. If I go to the photographs, that shows the existing siting. That's the existing monopole. It seems to be a bit falling over, and the proposed siting is in this area here. So minor changes. It is an increase in the height, but your officers consider that given its location within the centre of the carriageway and so on, it is acceptable in this case, and we are recommending approval with the new standard conditions, if you like, relating to the removal of existing equipment and the colour of the proposed equipment. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, no, thank you very much for that, Meg. Right, it is, just to remind members, it says on the front sheet it's a refusal, but as Meg has said there, it is up for approval. Anybody want to start the discussion? Councillor Duncan.
Yes, I'm afraid I don't like this reciting. We've seen some of these poles going up. They are very high. They're also very unsightly. They're not like the existing poles. And this moves it very close to residential development on the other side of the road. Now, the residential development doesn't have a lot of amenity in some ways, in that it's on a busy main road, the Uxbridge Road. So I think these poles and cabinets are much better placed on the south side of the Uxbridge Road next to the commercial development. I think it's possible for them to be sited there. The fact that there are existing ones already sited there means that it can be done. And I would not be in favour of them being moved closer to the residential properties opposite, which I think will affect their amenities. So I'm sorry, but I'm afraid I'm against this. Thank you.
Right, thank you, Councillor Duncan. Councillor Dillon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Without wanting to repeat everything, I agree wholeheartedly with Councillor Duncan. It's exactly what I would have said. Nothing further to add. I would not be able to support this application.
Okay. Any other councillors indicating here? Councillor Tubadar.
In terms of technology, obviously the number of existing cabinets hasn't been mentioned, or I didn't see. I know they are proposing to add 8 new cabinets. Okay, so in terms of the space, the new cabinets are taken versus what they were using on the pavement. Do we have any drawing which actually scales out the quantity of space on the pavement these cabinets are going to be using? One. Secondly, have we evaluated that the new technology which they're putting in is far more superior than what was in there? Or is it just a case of these guys of expanding, in other words, expanding capacity by putting more equipment in rather than improving the technology, which one of the conditions in the report says, which is the last condition in the report, NPPF, at achieving well-designed place. Which one was it? One of the conditions in the plan actually does say that there ought to be technological advances, and we should approve based on that. So have we looked at any of these items, or are we just saying, well, they had several cabinets, they're removing those, and that will do?
Okay. I see Councillor Chamdar indicating there, but Meg, is there a couple of points you might want to pick up that's been raised there by Councillor Tubadar?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. In terms of the number of cabinets that are there at the moment, there are 5 existing cabinets that would be removed. So there's 3 additional cabinets that are being proposed. In terms of the area that they take, there's not much difference in terms of the physical amount of space that they might take. The issue is that the proposed cabinets, as members will know from previous applications, are much bigger. the current ones are in the main 1.2 to 1.5 meters high, and they don't go much higher than that. And the proposed ones go up as high as 1.8 and 1.9. So they are much bigger cabinets, and they obviously that means that they have a more of a visual impact than the existing ones do. So the issue isn't that they take up more space within the road, it's more that they are bigger and higher than the existing ones, which is the visual impact that they have. So that's the reason that generally we've had refusals in the past, is because of the size of the cabinets as opposed to the area that they take up. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Troubadour, did you need to come back on any of that?
Yeah, that's one of the reasons I'm citing this, because I walk a lot lately, and I'm noticing the cabinet's heights and depth is increasing, and as a result, they occupy more space on pavements. And it will be really useful for the future application to have a plan where it shows exactly how much space the existing cabinets are using and how much space they're going to use in the proposed plan in relation to the size of the pavement. And also there is a point which I'm trying to find. It says, yes, we ought to support these applications providing they improve their communication capabilities. But is the improvement in communication capability going to be achieved through putting better technology or just enhancing the number of equipment which we have over there? Because the antennas are increasing. They're going for 8 antennas as opposed to 3 antennas they had previously.
James and Meg, maybe you could help answer the councillor's question there. I mean, is the upgrading technology a material planning consideration, or is it just its siting, size and positioning?
Thank you, Chairman. I think that government advice is that we should be supporting the technology that's being proposed. Obviously, there are requirements to consider visual impact and impact on adjoining occupiers, and the impact on highways. There is no highway impact in this particular case. Obviously, members need to consider whether there's an impact on the visual amenity, and that's something that Councillor Duncan has discussed. So clearly the increase in the height, the size of the cabinets will have a visual impact, and the question for members is whether it has a unacceptable impact, as Councillor Duncan has said, because of the fact that it's being moved closer to residential properties on the Uxbridge Road. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Meg. Okay, let's get some views from other members of the committee. Councillor Chamdal, you had your hand up.
Thank you, Chairman. Looking at the picture that Meg showed, those existing cabinets are horrible looking colour. But now what we're asking for a 60% increase in cabinets. We're asking to move it to the other side of the road. And there is, in the report pack on page 74, on the second paragraph down, the last sentence, that existing masts and site should be used unless there's a demonstrable need for a new site. Well, there's nothing demonstrated there for me why it should be moved to a new site, which what they're doing. Along with Councillor Duncan's valid point, it's closer to homes, but it's in the report, page 74. Can't you move it unless they demonstrate they need to move it? There's no demonstration there, so I would go against officer's recommendation on this point.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Chamdal. A sort of a picture is emerging here from members, so we will now go to Councillor Chapman.
Thank you, Chairman. Suffice to say, I agree with what's been said so far. I must admit, prior to Councillor Duncan mentioning it, I'd not considered the fact that by moving it into the middle, you are by definition moving it away from the retail side of the road, closer to the residential side of the road. I'm not personally that bothered about the increase in the number of boxes, etc. But that factor for me is very significant, and I'll be voting against the officer's recommendation as well.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Troubadour.
Thank you, Chairman. The condition which I was going to refer to is NPPF-10, which is says supporting high quality communications. And if I go further on 7.01 onwards, I can see here, which it says stressing the importance of advanced high quality and reliable communication infrastructure. So by changing the existing communication infrastructure, are they going to advance the technology and the quality of what they're going to supply? Because to me it says G3 company. So is it G3 replacing G3?
If I can help councillors, the applicant is 3 and it's 5G technology. So as Meg explains, members do need to put some weighting on the technological benefits, because the National Planning Policy Framework requires members to do that. However, if I can help members slightly, members did deal with the monopole in Hayes Town Centre, where they discussed a concern of the impact the monopole would have on surrounding town centre improvements. And I believe I'm right in saying this monopole is adjacent to some work that's been done to improve the highways verge with the different coloured signs that say welcome to Hayes. It was in one of the slides, and Meg may want to show committee, because if members are going to raise a concern regarding visual amenity, then maybe 1 or 2 slides actually help guide you in that respect.
Okay, I see that Councillor Duncan indicating there. Meg, it might be worth you trying to just show committee those slides that James was referring to there, just to help make the point. We'll take Councillor Duncan's point. James, maybe you want to shout out when you see the slide.
You saw the various coloured, different colours of the rainbow. That's a kind of artwork installation that was installed. Yeah, you'll see it in the background on that slide. I'm sure a number of members will have seen this driving down the Uxbridge Road. There's a kind of I can't remember exactly what it says. It was welcome to Hayes or whatever it says, but there's an installation of different coloured metal sections that are designed such that they, as you drive past, you see different letters. It's slightly cleverer than it appears in that particular slide. So it's just the point that there has been improvements made to the street scene here, and members may or may not feel that a 20-metre mast a short distance from that art installation isn't the correct location. I know Councillor Duncan's already raised a view concerning whether the location is the most appropriate.
Okay, all right. Thank you for making that point. I think I certainly get that now. Councillor Duncan, you had your hand up.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Just to reassure Councillor Troubadour, I was not speaking against the advance of new technology. I think we've approved these masts in various locations, and we know that this is, a future facility that all of us will need. It's simply the siting of it, and thank you for putting up the photographs again, because certainly I think it was Councillor Chandel commented on the colour of them, and it looks really, they look like a lot of old fridges or something that have been dumped by the side of the road. It does not add to the street scene. Also, I think the principle of putting these masts, which are really quite unsightly, busy masts, they're not just smooth things that the eye glides over. Your eye is caught by the protrusions on these things, as we've all seen, and cabinets which can be up to 6 foot high on the central reservation going down the main road, I think is just going to be very unwelcome. This is not how Hillingdon roads read at all, and I think they need to be kept closer to commercial areas or to areas that are screened by, you know, a lot of vegetation, as we've seen on the Harlington Road and Dawley Road and places like that, where there's some screening. The sighting of them is very important. That's in our hands. And I do think that in this case, I'm sorry, but I don't really like the principle of sighting them in the middle of the road. It draws attention, it makes clutter in the middle of the road, and it will be the first thing you see as you're travelling westwards, coming over the bridge from Ealing and Southall, coming down that stretch of road, and will immediately detract from the improvements that we have tried to put in place as a council to be welcoming to Hayes. So I think from the point of view of residents and the town improvements that the council has promoted here, the street scene, that's why I'm objecting, Chairman, but not to the advance of technology. Very happy to have it on the commercial side of the road where I think it would be more appropriate, and certainly in a colour other than white, which makes them look like a lot of dumped fridges and washing machines. Thank you.
Okay, no, thank you, Councillor Duncan. I've got Councillor Birra and Councillor Dillon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do know this area well. It sits on the boundary of 3 different wards, Jedding, Barnhill and Townfield. I often drive or walk around the area. There are lots of grey covers, sits on the Aussie Gorman roundabout. And honestly, like my colleague said, it is not a very good scene. I would prefer to go in near the commercial side, where they are less visible.
Okay.
So I will not be supporting the officer's recommendation on this.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Birra. Councillor Dillon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I agree with everything that's been said. I mean, from Councillor Duncan, wholeheartedly support that. But it just goes to show that these applicants don't do their research. If they had actually watched or listened to some of our debates on masts, they know that we fully support them. They know that we approve them in places where there is already masts alongside the same road, alongside the same section, side by side, and as long as they will remove the other mast and the street furniture, they tend to get approved. I just can't believe that they absolutely don't watch or listen or look at the minutes of other meetings and just waste their time. And to be honest, ours, on such ridiculous applications where you want to put a mast in the middle of a road, taking away the fact that it's near what is so-called art, but there's absolutely no way I will be supporting this application.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Dillon. I'm getting a definite sense of the direction of travel, the mood of the committee on this particular application, but we do need to move it forward in some way or another. So anybody, Councillor Duncan?
Well, thank you, Chairman. I move that we refuse this application. And the reasons would be that the siting would be contrary or damaging to the amenity of residents and street scene and town centre improvements. And I don't know what the policy numbers would be, but perhaps officers could help us with those policies, because we do have policies to protect all those things. But that would be the nub of why I would want it to be refused. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. James, Roger, you want to come in and sort of help?
Yeah, I think members can justify a refusal. All I was going to say is I think at some point in the decision notice, it should mention that we think a better alternative siting would be across the road closer to the existing location, whether that's in within actually in the refusal reason or a separate informative. I'd like to be delegated authority to work out what's best, but as long as the members are happy with officers doing so, I think the decision notice should not only say the relevant policies and that it's considered to cause visual harm, but that the council actually thinks there's a better location and it's closer to the existing mast, adjacent to the retail units in the Lombardy Retail Park.
That's very helpful. Yes, thank you, James. Yes, I would like to propose that, please, Chairman. Thank you.
Okay, captured that. Well, I've got 3 councillors indicating: Councillor Chapman, Councillor Dillon, and Councillor Chamdell. So we'll start with you, Councillor Chapman.
Councillor Chapman, thank you, Chairman, should I say. I think it's not been seconded yet, but I'm more than happy to second Councillor Duncan's proposal.
Okay, no, thank you for that. Councillor Dillon?
Councillor Chapman got there before me, C before D.
Okay, and Councillor Chamdell?
Them two going before me, but the National Planning Policy Framework 2019 does state that that site should be used unless there's a demonstrable need for a new site. This is another one where they've come in. I remember previously, I understand they don't really talk much to the planning department. I think they want to put it somewhere where it's easier for them. But there's no reason being made for it. There's no case being made for it. Then I'll go along with what's already been said.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Chamdell. I'm not seeing anybody else indicating, but we are moved and we are seconded to. Oh, well, we're going down to do the vote and see where we go with it. So, Councillor Chapman, you seconded, so I'll take it you're for refusal.
For refusal, Chairman, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ahmed Walana.
For refusal, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Brightman.
For refusal, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Tubadar.
You missed me.
Oh, okay. I'll wait.
In order. Councillor Tubadar.
For refusal, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. We'll come back to Councillor Chamdell.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I'll go against Officer Romadesh with the delegated authority to James to word it up.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Duncan, you moved, so I'll take it you're for refusal.
I'm for refusal, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bira.
For refusal, Chairman.
Thank you. And Councillor Dillon.
Refusal.
Thank you. Okay, that's a unanimous 8 votes for refusal. We've delegated authority to James to work up some specific wording around the refusal reasons. Is that, can you concur with that, Neil?
Confirmed, Chairman.
Okay, good debate, everybody. Thank you very much. Let's move on to agenda item 12, which is Baker's Yard, I believe. Over to you, Meg.
Thank you, Chairman. This application relates to 1 to 3 Bakers Road in Uxbridge. Members will know the site. It was a site which had an application approved in 2011 for 37 residential units and a residence gymnasium. And the building has been constructed. It has a space for a gymnasium, but it has never been fitted out as a gymnasium, and it is an empty space. And the proposal is to convert this empty space into 2 additional residential units. The loss of the gymnasium is acceptable. It was never intended to be a commercial gymnasium. It was for residents only, not for wider use. And there are a number of gymnasiums within easy walking distance of this site, including one across the road. So if residents wish to have access to a gymnasium, there are a number available. It does provide 2 additional units. The units meet all of the council's requirements in terms of size and so on. There are no external alterations. The proposal is subject to a section 106 which restricts parking permits to the residents, and also requires the provision. Members will know that this is in total over 10 units. It does require affordable housing, and that has been taken into account. And we are requiring 2 additional affordable housing units, which these 2 units would be. So there are benefits all round for this application. If I can just go directly to the presentation. So that's the site of the building, close to Uxbridge Station. And these are existing block plans and proposed. And this is the actual gymnasium area here. And that's being proposed to 2 separate units. Again, meeting all the requirements in terms of space. There are no external alterations that are being proposed, so the windows and so on are all already there. And I can go directly to the photographs. So this is the building, and it's on the 1st floor, so it's in this particular area here. Oops. And so, as I say, no external alterations, and an additional 2 units to be provided. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, thank you very much for your presentation, Meg. Right, who wants to open this one up for discussion amongst members?
Ladies and gentlemen, it appears we've lost the chairman briefly. We'll just see whether he can reconnect. If not, I'll hand over to Councillor Alan Chapman as Vice Chairman. 2 seconds.
I think he's lost his connection.
Yeah, we're just waiting, Councillor, to see whether he just rejoins quickly. If not, we'll hand over to Councillor Chapman.
Sounds like he's trying to get back.
Can you hear me now, Neil?
Yeah. We can hear you now, Councillor. Yes, thank you.
Everything just went frozen now. I thought I was in a time warp. So, okay, we had the presentation. Thank you very much for that, Meg. And also take us forward, Councillor Duncan.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I think it's good that this space, which has been unused, just empty, can be brought into use and provide 2 more units. It complies with all our policies. I don't think there's anything to object to in this, and I'd like to move the officer's recommendation.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor. Councillor Chamdale.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I agree with that. It's 2 affordable housing units as well, I think I heard, which was also beneficial. But one question to the officers is about amenity area. How does this affect the actual amenity area that's offered in the building? When we first adversely, so it goes against policy.
Meg, are you able to pick that one up?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. When it was originally approved, obviously there was no amenity space provision on site. As I understand it, there was a payment made in terms of improvements to open spaces adjoining or close to the site. There is no requirement currently in the deed of variation that's being proposed for the additional 2 units. We consider that the payment that was made previously would cover that issue in this particular case. Obviously there is no provision on site, and we have concentrated, as it were, on the requirement for affordable housing and also for parking. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Mick. Councillor Chamdal, have you got to come back on that?
Well, he's answered the question. I was just wondering where developers will put 3-4 gyms in a building, then come back again with the deed of variation, let's make them houses. But no, then I'm happy to second the officer's recommendation.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Chamdal. Any other members looking to indicate to speak? No. Okay, we are moved and we are seconded, so I propose we go to the votes. Councillor Chapman?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, go with officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Chapman. Councillor Ahmed Walana?
For the recommendations, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Brightman?
Go with officers' recommendations, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Chamdal, you seconded, so I take it you're for?
Yeah, for recommendation, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Tubadar?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the officer's recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Duncan, you moved, so I take it you're for?
I'm for, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bira?
Thank you, Chairman, for officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Bira and Councillor Dillon.
For the officer's recommendation, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Okay, Neil, I make that unanimous. 8 votes for approval of agenda item 12. Is that correct?
Correct, Chairman.
I can confirm agenda item 12 is approved. Thank you very much, everybody. Okay, swiftly moving on then to agenda item 13, which is just a bit further down the road in Vine Street. Over to you, Meg.
Thank you, Chairman. As you said, close to the previous site, this is an application at 1 Vine Street, which is located at the junction of High Street and Vine Street, close to the old Randall store, which is being converted into residential use. The application is for the conversion of the upper floors to this building, first and second floors, to 4 one-bed flats. Again, the flats meet the council's size requirements. This is an attractive building within the conservation area, and there are minimal alterations to the building, and most of the alterations are to the rear of the site, so not seen from any public viewpoint. So we feel that the alterations are acceptable as well. So if I go direct to the plans. So that's the siting of the building, and as you can see, it is in the conservation area and surrounded by a number of listed buildings. And this is the existing plan, and the ground level plan doesn't change. And the first floor plan shows that it is an unusually shaped building, but the flats do meet the requirement for 50 square metres. They're all over 50 square metres, and the changes that are being proposed will be evident. And this is the second floor plan. So the existing and proposed. So you've got balconies being provided to the rear, and there are a number of alterations to the rear, no alterations to the frontage. And that's the frontage. That's the rear of the site and the frontage. There is a short addendum on this item which relates to the advertisements and alterations that may be shown on any plans and photographs. They just stating that they are not part of the approval, and any advertisements that are shown on any plan will require the submission of a separate advertisement application, and that in particular relates to this photograph because, as you can see, the orange signage isn't approved or hasn't formed part of any application that's been before us. So that is the reason why I'm recommending that informative. This is the rear of the site, and as I say, the alterations that are taking place are to the rear of the site, and they are in character with the building itself. So we are recommending approval. Thank you, Chairman. It is subject to a section 106 restricting parking permits for residents. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, thank you very much for presenting that, Meg. Part of Uxbridge that we all know very well. So, Councillor Duncan, do you want to commence the debate or ask any questions?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I think this is a good development. It brings some more residential use into the town centre, and I think most importantly it preserves this quite distinctive frontage, which is of value in the street scene, and you know, to Uxbridge town centre. So I'm glad that they've been able to retain that and put it to good use as well, and introduce some balconies at the rear so that at least the residents will have a little private outdoor space as well. I think it's a good scheme, and I move officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for that, Councillor Duncan. Councillor Chandal.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, I'll second this. I like the idea of the balconies, but there's not much of a view. 80 units outside, but it's good to see that we're going to be restricting the issue of parking permits to future occupiers. Parking is at a premium there, so I would be happy to second the officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Chandal. We are getting a bit of interference in your audio there, so I don't know if there's any adjustments to your settings, but I think we got the gist of what you said there, and you, most importantly, you seconded the application. Councillor Ahmed Walana.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman, indeed, it's a very good development, and I support the proposal. There is no issue of bulk and size and design of the building. It harmonizes and enhances actually the design itself in the town centre. So I'm quite happy to support it.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Ahmed Walana. Right, we are moved and seconded. I'm not seeing anybody else indicating, so it's a good point to move to the vote, and I'll start as ever. Well, let's go in reverse order today. Let's go with Councillor Dillon.
Support the officer's recommendation, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bira.
For officer's recommendation, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Duncan, you moved, so I'll take it your for.
I am, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Jubidar.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the officer's recommendations.
Thank you. Councillor Chandal, you seconded, so I'll take it your
For the
for.
officer's recommendation, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Brightman.
We'll go with officer's recommendations, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Ahmed Walana.
I support the officer's recommendations. Why I'm the last one, Mr. Chairman.
No, we've still got Councillor Chapman to go yet.
Thank you, Chairman. I am in fact the last one, but yes, go with officer's recommendation.
Last but certainly not least. Okay, so Neil, I'll make that as unanimous 8 votes for officer's recommendation.
Yeah, agreed, Chairman.
Okay, so I can confirm agenda item 13 is approved. Okay, let's now go to the penultimate item for part 1 this evening at least, which is agenda item 14, Croft Close. Over to you, Meg.
Thank you, Chairman. 1 Croft Close. The application is, in essence, fairly simple. It's alterations to the chimney height at the front, extensions to an existing vehicular crossover, and the retention of a roof lantern on a single-storey extension that was previously approved. The issue here, I think, is the way the works have been conducted, and that appears to have upset a number of residents in the road and surrounding it. There are issues in relation to the way the works are being carried out, the state of the site, and the impact on street trees close to the site. And those are the issues that are particularly mentioned by residents. Unfortunately, in terms of the application that we have before us, as I said before, this is a simple application, and the impact of the proposal is minimal in terms of visual impact or impact on adjoining occupiers. So if I go to the plans, that's the site, junction of Croft Close and Sweetcroft. And
I can't see the presentation, sorry.
Oops.
It hasn't come up with Meg. That's it, you're on there.
Sorry. So that's the site. And there are a number of trees which are shown on the plan, which they should have protected and haven't. They are street trees, and it's the impact on those that has upset the residents as much as the state of the site currently. The proposal is to extend the crossover in this position here. That is acceptable, and to reduce the size of the chimney. This is it currently, and that's it proposed. So it's reducing it in height, and all of the extensions in themselves have either previously been approved or are permitted development. And the roof lantern is this element here, which is not particularly a major issue. So it is the way that the works have been conducted, as opposed to the works themselves, that residents are commenting on more than anything. And as you can see, the state of the site is not particularly attractive. And it's the impact on these trees here that needs to be considered as well. And to that end, I would suggest that we have a condition, a tree protection condition, requiring these trees to have protective fencing around them. I know that our street trees section are looking into this and to see whether any action can be taken against the applicant in this case, separate to the current planning application that we have before us. But in terms of the works that are proposed, they are very minor, and your officers consider them to be acceptable. Thank you, Chairman.
No, thank you for that, for taking us through that, Meg. Right, any indications as to who wants to start the debate on this one? Councillor Duncan.
Well, I agree that the site looks to be in almost a sort of neglected condition at the moment, and certainly needs work to be carried forward on it. And also, quite critically, the trees to be protected. But as we've been assured that that matter is in hand, presumably any work carried out, there would be protection to those trees. And also, could we ask if officers are looking at making tree protection orders on them, because they are in the street scene, they are in the public's view, they're not in a private area, if you like, even though they are in a private garden. But on the other hand, there's very little, I think. Yes, the reduction of the chimney, it is a feature, but normally wouldn't require permission, I think. So in terms of the works, I think we have to accept them, and for that reason I would move officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Duncan. I'm sure other members will have a view on this, maybe add some comments. Councillor Dillon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, no real comments. Again, same as Councillor Duncan. The trees are of a concern, as she's pointed out, and we're doing something about that. There's very little we can do about a development that's in policy, so I would tend to be siding on the officer's report and saying that we approve this and move on.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Dillon. Councillor Chapman.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I was going to second it myself. I did actually look on Google Earth, and I thought, surely this is a bit retrospective, because according to Google Earth, they've done a little bit of work, shall we say. I must admit, I was quite surprised looking at the images that the sheer amount of work that's been done. But in terms of the actual application and what they're proposing to do, I'm more than happy to support it. I think they're going about it in a rather bad way, irritating their neighbours, but the actual application itself I can support.
Yeah. And we have to consider the application that's in front of us as well. Okay, I've got a question for Meg, actually, on this. It's a prominent corner plot of Croft Close. I know that there has been crossovers in other properties along there, but is there anything we can do to ensure that they restore the frontage of the property to its former glory, as it is in such a prominent position, rather than just leaving it as we saw from the pictures, there is potential for that?
Yeah, and if I can go to page 114, members will see that there's a specific landscaping condition, and generally we wouldn't have such a condition on such a minor application. So it is for that reason, it is because of the state of the site, and because we want it restored to some visual betterment, if you like, that we are recommending this bespoke condition. And you can see that we are restricting it so that it is provided within a short time scale as well. So hopefully we can get that improvement done fairly quickly. Secondly, if I can just comment on the trees are not under a tree preservation order because they belong to the council. They are on the footpath, so hopefully they wouldn't need protection because we wouldn't want to destroy our own trees. So we would want them protected. So I am recommending that there's an additional condition requiring tree protection measures to be put in place before any further works are done. Okay. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you for that, Meg. Councillor Duncan?
Yes, thank you for that clarification. I wasn't quite sure from the photographs whether they were just within the application site boundary or just outside of it, but thank you. If they're on the street, then the council will hopefully be looking after them. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. I'm not seeing any other members indicate. We are moved, we are seconded. I think we've got delegated authority for an additional tree protection condition. So I think it's at that point we can now go to the votes. We'll start with Councillor Chapman.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, go with officer's recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Ahmed Walana.
For the recommendation, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Brightman.
Go with officer's recommendation, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Chamdal.
Officer's recommendation, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Duncan, you moved, so I take it you're for.
I'm for, thank you.
Councillor Bira.
Thank you, Chairman. Officer's recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Dillon, you seconded, so I take it you're for.
I am indeed, Chairman. Thank you.
So that's unanimous 8 votes for approval with delegated authority to officers for an additional condition for tree protection. Is that right, Neil?
Correct, Chairman.
Okay, I can confirm. Agenda item 14 is approved. So we can move now on to agenda item 15, which members will know this comes up every quarter. This is for the section 106 and 278 quarterly financial monitoring report. Are there any questions in relation to the contents of this report? Councillor Duncan.
Thank you, Chair. I have a question. It's not specifically in relation to the 106s, but some time ago we asked if SIL reports could be made available to us at the committee, because obviously they're about the developments that we approve, and that we could receive these reports in the same way we receive 106s. There was some debate about this, but basically finance said no, we have all the information, it's there, we can have it by ward, etc. But it was decided that the process for dealing with this was that it should go to the POC first. Well, the POCs are not being held. We should have, once it had been to the POC and they'd made their comments, then it would come to planning. But that's what we were told, that's what we were assured. Now, we're not having POCs at the moment. We understand the reasons why, but certainly about compiling information such as this, they can compile section 106s, the SILs will have been compiled. Can I ask that we have the SIL report at our planning committees, as was agreed? You know, they're only for us noting. We're not going to be taking action about anything. Any comments in policy terms would be by the POC when that meets again. But certainly I would like to see this information, please. And I think, well, I think all of us would. It's an important part of our work. So I would hope that that could be minuted and that request carried forward from the committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Duncan. Neil, I'm sure you've captured those points and we'll include them in the minutes for this evening.
I think we need to hear from James, Councillor.
Okay.
Yeah, I have previously promised that there will be some information on SIL to the committee, and there are some logistical difficulties in preparing that, but we will definitely come to the planning committee, and the team leader I've tasked with doing that, I will remind her that the committee has reminded me that the committee has been promised the information on the community infrastructure and the levy payments.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, James. Okay, any other comments from members in relation to agenda item 15? No, lots of nods of heads there. So, Neil, I think we can actually say that those agenda item 15 is noted with those comments from Councillor Duncan and James Roger.
Thank you, Chairman.
Okay. Right, that brings us to the end of part one. And for those watching on YouTube, we bid you good night as we will now cease the YouTube feed. Over to you, Neil.
Thank you, Chairman. If members would remain muted while I cut the feeds, bear with me.